What's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy, Kevin Forte, and this is breaking news. Big breaking news, and I'm not kind of overstating that, I don't think. I just made a video about this. I made a video about Jake Oettinger, and then he signed an extension, so now I just make another video. And I was in the process of making a video about JT Miller and whether I thought that the Canucks should extend him or trade him. And it kind of sounds like they already made up their mind. And I'm going to kind of piece together what I said in that last video and kind of put it together in this one. JT Miller signs a massive extension with the Vancouver Canucks, and we have to go over that today. So these are all the reports from last week. It's totally conflicting reports with what we've been hearing. So this is the first part, and this is from Rick Dhaliwal. He said, there's a good chance that contract talks with JT Miller will be cut off if a deal isn't done before the season. And then the follow-up report, which we heard from a couple of people, this one coming from Rob Simpson, saying at least two Metropolitan Division teams have trade interest in JT Miller. And I'm going to guess two of those teams were likely the New York Rangers and the Columbus Blue Jackets. But I don't know for certain, but I'm going to take a pretty good guess to that because he's from East Palestine, Ohio, which isn't, I'm going to assume, too far away from Columbus. And we know that the Rangers have shown expressed interest in him as well. I think the Islanders thing and the Devils thing might have died a little bit. But I think that was really interesting. More so the first quote from Rick Dhaliwal, because, again, if we were going to go into opening night, or the training camp for that matter, and that was the deadline for when JT Miller would sign an extension, well, the Canucks kind of lose all their leverage if that gets out, because that means they are not going to re-sign him. So that means they are forced to trade him or let him go in free agency. And that's where they kind of will not get the value they want for him. So instead, they decide to take another route. The route that is a little, I guess you can't say less traveled, because when you look at the Jim Benning era in Vancouver, this is exactly the move you would expect during the Jim Benning era. Overpaying a veteran guy that might not necessarily take you over the top. And I think that's what we're looking at here. And a lot of Canucks, I've read a lot of Canucks articles over the last couple of weeks, and a lot of them are kind of in agreement with that. Is the fact that, let's go over the contract details to get that out of the way for you guys. So, JT Miller, a 29-year-old forward, had an incredible season in Vancouver last season. Putting up career numbers. Of course, he couldn't hit the 100-point mark, but 99 points in 80 games last season with the Canucks, 32 goals, 67 assists. He's played over 600 games in the league. So you knew that something was going to be on the table here for him, and this was a massive contract. He's coming off of a 5-year, $26.25 million deal. He signed back with the Tampa Bay Lightning back in 2018, but now he has the big extension coming next summer. He signs from Patrick Allvin and the Vancouver Canucks, signing a 7-year, $56 million contract. It's a base salary of $8 million per season, and that is the annual cap hit, $8 million per year for JT Miller. The salary cap comes in at 9.7% of the Vancouver Canucks cap hit. This is a whopper. This is a massive extension, but smaller than what a lot of people maybe expected. JT Miller was coming out here big nuts coming out here saying he wants $10.5 million per season on a deal. And all of a sudden, he signs an $8 million per season deal. What's up with that? So you might want to look back at what happened this summer. Maybe JT Miller learned from some players around the NHL this year. Maybe the offer isn't always greener on the other side. And I think that happened to two players in free agency this summer in particular, Nazem Kadri and Johnny Gaudreau. You look at those two players in particular, maybe they were thinking they were going to get more money than they were offered on the free agency market. And JT Miller maybe thinks the same thing. Yeah, you know what? They were expecting these big offers from teams this summer and free agency. And maybe GMs are finally using that brain and deciding, you know what, maybe they're not worth that $11 million. Look at even a great talent like Artemi Panarin. You think the Rangers are saying a little bit to themselves, we might have overpaid Panarin a little bit, right? You look around the league, that's not one example. John Tavares, another example. Even at the time, it was a high cap hit, and that one's not aging well year after year, despite a franchise talent. So teams maybe are starting to learn the book, right? You don't overpay in free agency. And maybe JT Miller thought the grass was greener on the other side, like those other players, and is maybe saying, you know what? Maybe it's just worth getting the stability now, getting the guaranteed bag. I'm not waiting all summer next year to find a contract that may never come. And that's maybe what he's looking at here. And John Klingberg is another guy that kind of thought he had a better deal, decides to wait it out, and he ends up taking a lot less in a deal with the Anaheim Ducks than what he was offered in, October, November from the Dallas Stars last season. So JT Miller is maybe saying, you know what, maybe I don't have that great season next year. And now I lose some of that leverage from the team, and that's where kind of things go. So this is a very interesting signing. Not what I was expecting the Vancouver Canucks to do, if I'm going to be completely honest. But if they were going to get a deal done, they had to get it done before training camp, I think. And they were able to do that. Now here's the second part of it, because this is the part that you guys are going to say in the comments is, what does this mean for the Canucks' future? So, and this is where a lot of articles for the Canucks have been saying recently, and I want to see what they think of this, because I don't want my opinion to kind of get inflated with what they're saying out there. But the polls from the Canucks fan base, I think, and the media and everybody else there in Vancouver, is, if we're being 100% honest, are the Canucks truly a playoff team in 2023? Hypothetically, the ideal is they're a playoff team, maybe third or fourth in that Pacific Division. But if you're being realistic, they are probably still another year or two away from being a legit contender with this group. You need a little bit more firepower, right? And that's where the Niels Höglanders and the Vasily Podkolzins up front maybe develop a little bit. Maybe you get another young defenseman or two that develop and kind of add depth to your blue line. And they don't really have that yet. So by re-signing JT Miller, and I said this in my video earlier, I kind of said that you're mortgaging the future re-signing JT Miller to win now, because A, you're taking on that salary, which is going to hurt you on the back end, and B, the potential value you could have gotten for JT Miller goes out the window because you signed him to that extension. So you're kind of losing asset and kind of value in two areas. JT Miller is going to become a diminishing asset in 7 years compared to what the up-and-coming prospects you could get in the next 4 or 5 years in a package for JT Miller right now. So that's kind of why I'm debating. I'm really not. I don't think this is the greatest move by Vancouver. This is definitely where the Jim Benning era of the Canucks kind of faltered for them, right? They always pushed for every season making a decision to win now, when they weren't necessarily ready to win now. And you kind of look at a team like the Edmonton Oilers, they're almost doing the opposite of that. In the sense that they're keeping their prospects, they're keeping Puljujarvi, they're keeping Yamamoto, they're keeping Broberg, Samorukov, they're keeping all their young guys in order to let them develop and become the depth players that will be part of your team, instead of trading them out just for the next shiny new object every season. And I worry that Vancouver's kind of been doing that here. You look what they've done the last couple years, right? The Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Connor Garland thing last year. We knew that was going to blow up as soon as day one hit, right? And that's not looking too great a year later. Now JT Miller at this point is kind of becoming the next one of that. And I know JT Miller's a good player, right? He had a great season last year, but to expect him to do that next year, I don't think the Canucks are even expecting him to do that next year. But again, if that's the case, then why were you so urgent to do this? And that's why I'm kind of hesitant, because the Canucks have a lot of big contracts coming up. And this is a deal that you're locking yourself into till the summer of 2030. Do you really want to lock up $8 million to a 29-year-old player that's going to be 36, 37 years old when this contract is done. I don't know if that was the best move necessarily for the Vancouver Canucks. It's definitely a win now move, and it could benefit them, but I do have my hesitations about this one. Just to name a couple of guys that their contracts end before JT Miller's deal. Basically everybody on the team, but some crucial ones. Elias Pettersson in the summer of 2024. Brock Besser in the summer of 2025. Bo Horvat, the captain of this team, his contract ends next summer, in the summer of 2023. Vasily Podkolzin, summer of 2024. You're looking at a couple of guys here that are no joke. And Niels Höglander, next summer. The Vancouver Canucks have to be very careful with how they spend their money long term. Because I hate to say it, you look at some of the contracts on this team, and they've kind of been an anchor for them, right? Tyler Myers, he still has 2 years left, $6 million per season. That's a big hit for the team to try and win then. And they're still paying for it now. And they didn't do much winning during that time of the Tyler Myers signing. Oliver Ekman-Larsson, 5 more seasons of Oliver Ekman-Larsson at $7.26 million per season. He takes up over $8 million, or 8% of the cap hit on this team, and they're not necessarily in win mode. So it kind of makes you wonder, why did they do that? And we know that Jim Benning was infamous for being very trigger happy with his money in free agency. But this is now the Patrick Allvin, Jim Rutherford era of Vancouver, not sacrificing a player in order to acquire younger prospects, draft picks, and saving that cap space in order to win now, keeping JT Miller. So I've kind of rambled on a little bit here, but I'm trying to cover all the bases for what I think you guys want me to talk about here, because I think this is a move, like I said, that this is telling Canucks fans, the roster, and the organization overall as a whole, we want to win this season. If we don't make the playoffs this year, this is a move that they're expecting to make the playoffs. Because if they weren't expecting to make the playoffs, they would try and find any package or the best package available for JT Miller. And maybe that's what happened. Maybe they just saw the packages for JT Miller out there and were just not impressed at all and said, all right, we didn't get what we wanted for him. We'd rather just keep him. And I'm sure they did that. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. What do you guys think of this whole JT Miller, potential trade and now contract extension? I'm shocked. I really am. But I really want to hear what the Canucks fans and other fans around the league, what do you guys think of JT Miller re-signing in Vancouver? Guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.